My name is Mark Obar as well. Today we are on a mentorship program known as SKL mentorship programs. And it's important for us to let you know that we have very well accomplished engineers and a doctor in the panel who will be introducing themselves in the next few minutes. I have Mrs. Carol Koech, we have Dr. Gladys Ngetich, and then we have Dr. Peggy Keme.
First one is value instillation, if that is the right word, like instilling correct values, humility, and all those things, discipline and such things. And then number two, self-confidence, teaching a kid to stand up for themselves, to know that they have something to give to the world. And I think if you teach that skill at home and you hone it at home, it will happen elsewhere. Say your truth or explain what you told me yesterday or Great. Say what you know with confidence. You are shaking inside, but with all the confidence.
Appreciate the different backgrounds and just gel well with everyone. It created a lot of community in us that now we became sisters to each other. Those who had shared very well with those who didn't have. It reinforced the values. Our motto was walk in the light, and the teachers really taught us to walk in the light. It's to stay where you're supposed to be. Just as well do something more constructive, rest, catch up on your schoolwork. So those values actually helped me through campus. We learned self-discipline, just to do the right thing when nobody is watching, to walk out when you must walk out, when you've got something to go and do, not just because there's an opportunity to walk out. So being privileged sometimes can make you very comfortable that if you're not careful, then you don't work hard. So even for the privileged, I think especially for the parents, it's very important that you keep a close eye and mentor your children, talk to them, expect high things from them. Just the fact that you're able to provide, don't just keep providing. If they lose their pencils, don't just keep replacing, because then they do not learn to be responsible.
Dr. Peggy, how best can a society, the immediate society, the external society, indoctrinate or configure, if I use computing technology terminologies, reconfigure a child's mindset to be focused on the specific things that they need to do? How best can this really be configured within a child's mental faculty?
We are delegating too much. So you find that because you've taken your kids to the best school, for example, then you think the school will do everything and you can concentrate on your other business. So you've got to be there. If it is the tech world, be there. It's very easy to say, oh, we don't understand this Generation Z or whatever it is that they are called. But then you've got to get into their space, because sometimes we are likely to condemn something and yet it is not bad, like technology. Yeah. It's got its positive aspects, but because of the fears that we have, we want to withdraw it and condemn it. And by so doing, you deny your children the positive aspects of technology. So I think it's just being present, knowing what is going on, and we live in an information age. And also, we are still a community. You're not raising on your own. So the challenges cut across board. So keep the community.
Ms. Carol, parents, how can parents really lay a proper foundation for their children? What are some of the things to consider when laying this foundation for your child at that level? And how do you deal with resistance from a child who does not like or want that kind of a foundation?
Interesting question. I will not pretend to be a parenting expert, but I will share my experience, being raised and how those skills sort of play out today in my current role. I think for me, when I look at my current role, demands a lot of versatility. It demands being present but more importantly, being able to handle many topics at the same time. I built that capacity because of how I grew up. As you know, see things and I know they got to be done. It's not like there's no excuse. So being able to build that can-do attitude, I think was really part of growing up because of all these things. So you learn to juggle many balls in a day. And for a 10-year-old, being able to do that, that becomes your normal. So when I come to the office today and I have like 10 things to deal with, my brain is just able to switch between the different topics without really feeling that I am getting overwhelmed, that there's nothing impossible because of just how I grew up. Those things, there's nothing to be sorry about. Those things build you as a resilient person. And so a lot of children learn by modeling. They see and they see and they do what they are seeing. So that deliberate effort to be present, to participate, to inspire helps. To be honest, sometimes when you're fully engaged, maybe in a full-time role, it's always a balance of do I provide sufficient time or do I not? And sometimes we shoot ourselves, sometimes we don't. I'm not so sure how many people are going through this, but it is always a struggle to find a balance.
Parents, they need to understand that children are really watching and children are learning out of that.
Just to say, I think if you have a dream, a serious dream you are chasing, then as a young person in uni, anything should not derail you. And if things go south, and they do happen, I'm not saying they can't happen. I think there are kind of ways to go around it, as long as you have like a vision and where you are headed. So I think somehow you can still end up there.
Dr. Peggy, particularly. So I want us to begin from the very basics of mentorship. What mentorship is and why it's so important for any person to be mentored. And as you explain, can you let us know if you've also been mentored by anyone? And who should mentor anyone? Yes.
Mentorship is really, you can call it guiding or walking together by a more experienced person who we call the mentor, working with a less experienced person who we call the mentee. It's got nothing to do with age. You may actually have a mentor who is younger than you because perhaps they've walked that road before you. And mentorship to work, both the mentor and the mentee should be willing to take the mentorship journey. So the mentor should be available to work with the mentee. And the mentee should also be willing to be guided because many times I think you can mentor somebody without knowing you're mentoring them. You asked, have I been mentored? Yes, I have been mentored by very many people, starting with my own parents and my elder sister. I actually say that I think I started making decisions maybe when I was joining campus because I'm a last born. So I've got a sister and two brothers, and more or less before campus, I really did what my sister had done. So when it got to choosing schools, she too had gone to Alliance, so I just chose what she had done. So she really mentored me. But when it now got to campus, I think that's where I drew the line because she's a medical doctor and I really feared blood. I didn't want to see blood at all, so I didn't want to do medicine. So my first mentors were members of my family. Then came the teachers, and teachers are usually very good mentors because they bring out the positive energy. I mean, they identify your strengths and actually say them. So my teachers rise through from primary. Am I mentoring people? Yes, I have people who are mentoring, and these are people who perhaps have just seen what, and I also would like to give credit to my husband. He really is great on mentorship. So we've got many young people who come and ask us, so how did you go about it? But the thing about mentorship is honesty. Sometimes we like to paint a flowery picture. We all have our skeletons somewhere. But sometimes we want to make it look like things have always worked. So in mentorship, you really just have got to be honest. So we've got people who come to our home. I've got students that I mentor at the university. So that has been the mentorship journey.
Carol, I'm coming to you, and especially on the issue of the various levels of mentorship, whether executive, and it's because, first of all, you hold quite a senior position, you've seen it all. So at the business level, is there anything like mentorship? Is there, can a 50-year-old person be mentored? Can a woman mentor a man, or how does it go? So all those issues you're going to explain to us. But now, Dr. Gladys, yeah, mentorship, as she has said, that there must be some sort of willingness, mutual agreement for two or more people to work together, and especially on particular things. But one, there are many people who do not know even where to get mentors, or even whether they need one. Should seek mentorship. How do I identify a mentor, and how do I work with this mentor? So who should seek mentorship? How do I identify a mentor, or who is a mentor particularly, and how do I cooperate with them in terms of the various factors in that kind of a program?
I think you look for a mentor when you need a mentor. I always sought a mentor when I needed one. What can I learn from you? And I think that is, I feel like that way it's efficient and it's more useful. Otherwise, sometimes I feel like mentor and mentee terms are too heavy and vague. So anyway, we should look for mentorship. I think it's someone in need. So it could be, people have different ways of going around mentee and mentor situationship, but I'm just sharing my own example.
Okay.
Like mentor and mentee is too heavy. Like if someone tells me, be my mentor, I shrink. I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do tomorrow when I'm your mentor? But just people to support you along the way. So anyway, those are some of the how. And then how it works, I think it really depends on I feel like mentor-mentee is just like any other relationship.
So are people being mentored without them knowing that they're being mentored? Is it possible to mentor people without them knowing? What is the first step to seeking mentorship? Do you get the person who has walked that journey? How do you approach them? Where do you find them? Particularly for many, many people who are probably watching online and wondering, so where? Like, these people are very lucky, they're getting mentors everywhere. But where do I get one?
You just have to be hungry, like really hungry. Like with LinkedIn, with YouTube, with sessions like this, right? Like if you are seeking a mentor, you would go to conferences, you would write emails, you would be on LinkedIn. So in terms of like...
Please do. Please.
I really like that about you've got to be hungry.
Yeah.
Because...
a few comments around the other ways to find mentors. So I've been involved in, I would say, formal kind of setups where, people are in a program. So there are many programs that run. I've been involved as a mentor with Yali. I don't know, most of you would know about it. Yes. So usually those would be very specific. You have a time limit on how long the mentorship is and exactly what you're talking about. But in most cases where I've been a mentor, it has to come from the mentee what they want. Mm-hmm. What is this that you want from me? Sometimes, it's learning how to apply for the first job, how to build confidence, whatever it is. I just recently concluded a mentorship program with IFC. They're running a program with women in renewable energy. Mm-hmm. And this was a 6-month program. Mm-hmm. And so there was a pool of mentors and there was a pool of mentees and they were matched. So the first conversation, you meet your mentee and you ask, what do you want from this mentorship? You agree then the terms of engagement, what exactly you will be working on, the frequency of meetings, and those kind of things. And again, the mentee has to be flexible, especially when you're dealing with a mentor who is very, very busy. And so many times you have to change the times for calls because the schedules keep changing. And as a mentee, because you're the one in need, then you must be able to drive the conversation. And I find myself all the time coming back to the mentee to say, hey, at the beginning we discussed this. how do you feel based on the discussions that are progressing? And I always find that mentees are not very clear on what they want. So at the beginning you discuss this, these are the specific things I need. But as you continue sharing stories, then they start to follow the path that you're going instead of bringing you back to say, hey, but this was the original idea. And I always find myself coming back to the original objective and say, so are we still on track? And you see, if you find many mentees just get derailed, and at the end of the engagement, if it was a formal, then they don't really have exactly, well, they'll find other things, but is it exactly what they wanted? So that's what I have found on who do you look up to. I always say, if you answer that question, then there you are, and who do you look up to in this particular thing? So if I say, for example, in the political world, who do I look up to? Then I would probably reach out to that person to build a certain skill set that I need. So I think mentorship is alive every day, and everybody will always, if you have a growth mindset, then there will always be that element in your life that you feel is lacking, and you might see somebody who has it and you'll be like, I would like to hear from that. So personally, I'm constantly seeking mentors. Even today, I seek mentors. So I know that I need to learn how to do, for example, how to navigate the political environment in corporate. And there are certain people in corporate that do this with a lot of ease. So I seek them out. And this is where, of course, the higher you go, the more harder it is to find these people. Not the people themselves, but the availability to have those kind of conversations, because you can imagine how many people are reaching them, out to them to mentor them. So you have to be very specific when you request. I am very excited about this. Let me give you an example. I attended a conference early in the year, and one of the ladies who was in the panel, just shared her story, and I was so fascinated by her career path. And I said, I like that path, and I want to learn how she transitioned from corporate to running her own business. And I didn't even have her number, because I just went to LinkedIn, connected with her, sent her an inbox and said, I would like to meet you for breakfast to discuss this. And that mentorship has become, it has really become something very interesting. And the first day we met, it was someone I hadn't met at the conference. I had watched her make a presentation just like this panel, reached out to her later. We had the first breakfast, the second breakfast, and we continued to engage. She's extremely busy. So I have to be flexible to fit her schedule. And when she says come for breakfast at 7, I will show up. If she says come at whatever time, I will come, because I'm the one who is in need. And I do exactly the same to my mentees as well. So I say across when you're a child, when you're in the university, when you are working, when you're you're junior in the work environment, or you're in academia, you would really be seeking, if you, again, looking at what you want in your life, areas of growth, you would constantly be seeking mentors. Yes.
The mistake is we forget that we are individuals. So we want to hide in a crowd to do the things that are not really right. And we forget that eventually we go back to, yes, you will say you're this class, but when you get your grades, you get them alone. When you're going to be job hunting, you're going to be job hunting alone. When you're going to be, so you cannot always hide in that mass. So I think that's one of the really important things that students need to realize, that when all is said and done, it is me. What do I want? Yeah. Mentorship programs just die a natural death. When it is not achieving what it is supposed to be achieving, then the mentee stops looking for the mentor. The mentor stops. So sometimes there isn't really a formal exit clause that we are ending this relationship. It's just that the two of you stop. Naturally. Yes.
And if you are applying for scholarship, if you are at the place where you're considering to apply for scholarship, really, like Google is the first cousin, the first sister or brother to help you. You just Google, how do people get a scholarship to go to UK? And you'll get million results, right? So that could be the first. But you will only do that if you are hungry, right? Or you go to vloggers. There are vloggers who are writing and talking about their experiences. I don't want to say million of them, but so many of them. LinkedIn, do you have a profile there, right? Even Facebook or Twitter, how professional is your profile when you are reaching out? I think the only problem is just hungry, and people are not serious. Otherwise, the solutions are everywhere, really, if you ask me, right? So I hope that answers the question of where do people get, right?
Exactly.
Just Google is the first place. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. In uni, especially if you are in uni, or if you're not in uni, you are in a community. You have siblings, or you have neighbors, or if you are in corporate, you have people, so many people in that office and other departments. I think you just have to come out and say this is what I want, and seek out. I'm sure you will get it. And in terms of, you asked how you handle failure. Failure, if you, for instance, if you do fail with the scholarship application. Okay, I might be biased because when I applied, I got the scholarship. So most of my advice, people say I'm biased because I got it. If I had, actually no, I actually missed a couple. Maybe 3 that I really wanted, and then I missed because I couldn't meet criteria. Some I couldn't do the interview and all that, and then I finally got one. But I want to say how to handle failure. We have to acknowledge that failing is part of life, and you are not special if you fail. And so if you let it stop you, then you were really not passionate, or you were really not very serious about what you're looking for. Let me give, so these guys are not serving me food, and I feel like we are entitled so much nowadays, and you get one failure, you're like, you know what, this thing is not for me, I'm not lucky. But if you're really serious, you will jump over, you will go over, you will push, but you will get there. Yeah, is what I think about failure and how to navigate it.
Good, great. So, yeah, that's a very, very powerful point. By the way, at level, how do you handle a mentee who is obviously failing? They're obviously going to fail. How do you bring them back if they continue on that path? I mean, you may laugh, but the truth is that I've also been a lecturer. I've taught students, and I know some that are obviously failing and will continue to fail if something doesn't happen in the process. Yeah. So, and it's sometimes very hard to tell them that, you are failing, or this thing, just forget about it.
Sometimes you have to allow people to experience the failure so that they realize for themselves that it's not working. So you can't sort of tell someone there's a ditch up there. You can only tell them, and if they don't listen, you allow them to go, and then they see it for themselves. So this is what I have, learned over the years, that you can share your experience, you can share with people the pitfalls, you can narrate your story, and you hope that in your story somebody will be smart enough to pick some lessons and to also see potential areas of failures. Smart mentees would actually ask, for example, I'm facing this challenge, how do I overcome it? That means they are willing to get themselves out of the failure. And I go back to the point that Dr. Gladys mentioned of being hungry. When you're hungry, you can see where the food is. And so even if there's a fence, you will figure out whether to go under or above to go and get it. So failure is a part of life. Failure for me is actually what makes us better. Because when you fail, then you know what not to do again. Because you've learned one way not to do it. And so you will try again a different way and a different way. And by all these experiences, you definitely become a better person. And you sort of, consolidate that over the years and become better and better along the way. Yeah.
Anyway, I think if you continue persisting, there is a lesson every time. And if you keep waking up, you can actually use all those learning and all that grit, and it can take you to another step.
I want the online audience is really active over here, and I'll pick a few questions from them, and I'll share with you. But I just want to give 2 people a chance to, among the audiences, to ask a few questions. Be very specific, and to the person you are asking, introduce yourself, and then we can proceed from there. So can I see any hands? Anyone who would like to ask a question? Then we will proceed. We will come back to this. Don't be shy. There is no need for being shy. You can. Okay. Pass the microphone. Just introduce yourself and then ask your question. Also identify the person you're asking, whether it's the entire panel or a specific person. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Anne Mula. I'm an engineer too. So it's to Gladys, but feel free to answer. On failure, because it's the most recent one, she's mentioned when they get back to you in terms of improvement this and this. What of the opportunities where you keep trying and no one gets back to you, so you don't really know what you're doing wrong? Like, what are the ways you can improve yourself to be able to get those opportunities? Thank you.
My name is Marian College, and I'm in corporate. So I'd like to ask Carol, maybe you can give us a background of your journey as you rose through the corporate ranks. What did you do to get where you are? And what's one takeaway that you'd like someone to have as they start their career?
Great. I'll give you a chance to answer the questions. I'll start with.
Oh, okay. So Anne is asking a question of, no one is telling you what the problem was with your CV or your application materials. I suspect that there are people who've gotten it, right? So I think the first thing that comes in my mind is seeking out those people through whatever medium, right? Seek out to those who got it and ask them, how did they apply? And if they have any tips and strategies on how you can repackage yourself. I think is what comes on top of my list. So I'm not sure if that answers. You don't sound.
Yes.
Yes.
But what if you've tried that too?
You've tried that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are very minimal opportunities in the country today.
Mm-hmm.
So more than just seeking these opportunities, what is a balanced life that an individual, a young person or an older person can seek? What is a balanced approach to life so that if one door closes, how do you open another one? I think that is part of the mentorship programs or mentorship generally in the society. Yes. How do you open another door when every other door is closing on you?
Okay, I'll say one point and then I think Carol wants to add.
Yes.
So I want to say, if there are no opportunities in Kenya, go out of Kenya. If that is not an option, try something else. I think if you, like for instance, if you are applying for a job, I tell people and they get surprised. With first class in mechanical engineering, I didn't get a job. Or rather, like there was this graduate program at Schlumberger, and we were recruited, but then they were not hiring anymore, and so we didn't get, right? So for 8 months of my life, I didn't have a job with first class in mechanical engineering. Actually, very, very strong first class. I had for 84 points, right?
That's great.
I didn't have a job. And when I say that, people get, anyway, in Kenya, maybe not so surprising, but I did online writing, right? For 3 months, I was like, you've got to do whatever you've got to do. Go home, do farming. Go muturwa, nunua nguo, sell. You can just do something. Someone said, actually ended up, I worked for I&M Bank for like 4 months. Mechanical engineer, I was learning banking, learn something. I feel like if you're really hungry, and someone said, and I like quoting these, and I think that is what we are lacking. I mean, obviously we have problems in our system, but I feel like part of the problems is also on us, right? Someone said the best way to keep a bicycle stable is cycling it. And so if you don't have a job, just be doing something, just be cycling. It doesn't have to be going that direction, but just be cycling. And then over time, it becomes stable and you just like reroute, right? So anyway, so if this door closes, you look for another one. Engineering door for me, mechanical engineering didn't work out. I went to banking. And then the bicycle kept going. And then I ended up quitting and then went to the UK, did a doctorate, and then now I'm working in engineering, right? So anyway, again, I'm biased. That was my experience. But I feel like we just have to be hungry and then just be versatile. And I think you had mentioned versatility. And I think that is what we want to encourage.
I think you're it's a good transition to answer that question. And, you know, they always say, what do you do in the hallway? when you're waiting for the next door to open. You could stand and stare at a door, or you could be walking the hallway. You might discover a window or something else. I think for me, when I look at people at this age, I consider the opportunity so immense, because I see technology as brought, I would say, a flat space, and it's really up to you to find things to do online. There's plenty to do. You can create content. You can do so many things as you wait to find whatever dream you have. But if you sit back, I know that many people, I see many parents today coming to me, chasing me with CVs of their children to find them jobs. And I keep asking them, where are these children looking for the jobs? Why is it that the parents are the ones carrying around the CVs and not the children? Because even when I want to have a conversation to find out how this child is, what do they want to do, the parent cannot answer those questions. They just know the child graduated from university with whatever degree. But if you want to understand the interests of the child, they are nowhere. So I always tell them to come to me. We have a conversation on just basically even just figuring out where to start. And I can tell you 99% of them, they never come.
Yeah.
I don't see the children. So I think we've also then, as maybe the parents, taken over the responsibility of putting the food on the table, including the job for the child on the table. So you take them to school, you put food on the table, and until the responsibility of finding the job comes from the child, for me, it's you could be lucky, your parent could be well connected and you could get the job, but will you be inspired to do that job if you didn't work for it? But to answer your question, Maria, so I actually did, I took a very similar, maybe not similar, very different path. But when I got out of university, I would say I was one of those lucky people that I did not tarmac. I had gotten an award at the university with Safaricom when I was in my 4th year, and that award was going to allow me to take an internship. So I actually went to work in Safaricom when I was still staying at my college hostel. And while still, doing that internship, I was interviewing for different jobs, and my first job was with KPMG. And I remember going, to start working at KPMG with a degree in engineering. I had not even graduated, by the way. And, I am in an audit firm. I have no clue what happens there. I mean, the first job you do was to do a bank reconciliation. I had never done any bank reconciliation anywhere. But I had to learn, and I did that job. But then quickly I discovered, okay, maybe quite misplaced here. Let me continue finding jobs. And I continued interviewing, and I was lucky to join Unilever in a graduate trainee program. Then they used to call it management trainee program. But because I had been to KPMG, when I went to Unilever, the managers there told me, no, you already have a finance affiliation. And in any case, at that time, the CFO of that organization was an engineer. So they told me, you can take this path. And so I had to then do finance qualifications. And so I found myself doing SCCA. For many people, they used to struggle to do SCCA, but I think after studying engineering, it was probably a lot easier. So I did it in a very record short time. Came as top student in some papers in the country, but and I was doing that while working, and I was a young mother as well. And then I left Unilever after about 4.5 years and went to join GE, and I went to GE in a finance role. Then around that time as well, I went back to do my master's, and so I was doing my master's as a part-time because I was already working. So I went to Strathmore to do my master's, and after 1 year of master's program, I said, I'm sitting on potential here. So I dusted my engineering degree and said, okay, I think I can try a technical role. So I went into a techno-commercial role at GE. It is very unusual for someone to move from finance to a commercial role, but I took the risk. So one of the things I would say is, for me, it was the willingness to take the risks, and it was really a gamble, because this is 7 years into my career, and I'm moving to a completely different world. I have no clue what's going on there. And it took a lot of learning, and learning really fast. And I'll say really that probably helped me to propel me faster to the top, because then I had this background in finance, I had this technical background in engineering, and now I'm now building this background in commercial. And that just became one job after another, and I found myself at the top. And all those skills that I learned consolidate. In my current role, I use everything. I use my finance background, I use my selling background, I use my technical background. And it just came together, not by design. by accident, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. So we will take more questions, but I want to ask Dr. Peggy a very important question. Is there anything like unhealthy mentorship? And I'm just wondering, can you mentor a 50-year-old man or a 60-year-old man? And I'm giving that example to help you define if there is anything like unhealthy mentorship that you should just probably not consider. And especially, we are not just ourselves, but we are our families, our children, our husbands, our everything else. So we are representation of so many other things to us. So even when a mentor and a mentee are considering any program or any arrangement, should they also look out for anything like unhealthy mentorship that should be dropped immediately?
It's interesting that you ask me that question when I have, I think, two of my PhD students are actually approaching their 60s. And I think when the objectives are very clear, then all those barriers do not come into play. But yes, there is unhealthy mentorship. In fact, I prefer to call it toxic. Because if the objectives are not very clear, or if the parties are not willing, I mean, sometimes, especially even in the university setup, we've had, say, senior people who kind of want to impose mentorship on you because they feel they've walked this journey and you should follow suit. But perhaps that's not what you want. But the good thing is, as long as your boundaries are clear, then that won't happen. Because you just find a respectful way of just saying that I'm not ready for this at this point. So for unhealthy mentorship to sprout, then it means both of you, maybe one of you is not comfortable enough to just speak out. And it ends up being a journey of bitterness. And so I think it's just best to speak out because mentorship is voluntary. You cannot force somebody to mentor another. So you just have to speak out and cut
So how should a mentee, what should a mentee expect by the definition of the boundaries that these are the lines you should not cross? I mean, you're a mother, you're a wife, and regardless of what it is, you have specifications by timing to when you can attend to certain things and when you can't. What are some of the expectations by way of definition of boundaries in mentorship programs that any mentee should understand from the onset, that now these are, I call it a wisdom factor, yeah? Understanding the wisdom of life, that this is now, you can't call me this number of times in a day or in a week and these are very small things. They look quite small, but they affect the entire outcome of that entire arrangement. Yeah.
I think communication is very key. You've got to really just make it very clear right at the onset. And I do that a lot with like the students assigned to me for projects. Because when you're doing a project with a student, then you've got to work very closely. So you make it very clear that my preferred mode of communication is this, email, or if you're comfortable, when do you use the phone, how should you use the phone, what language. For example, there's a language that I cannot stand. That language of sax, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's XAXA. I mean, the minute you start that way, I already just, I may not even understand what comes after that. So I make it very clear to my students, for example, that my preferred mode of communication is this. You're only allowed to use the phone if the lab is burning, for example, if it's an emergency. And how do I define an emergency? And then when the objectives are clear, of course, we are human beings. So in as much as this could be an academic mentorship, there are life factors that may affect your academics. You're having struggles at home. And it's just, I think for the mentor, you've got to know how much is too much, you know? So when you tell me that, yes, you're not able to buy food, I think that is okay, because then we can see how we can help in one or two ways. But there are things that then, you know, like what that student was coming to tell me about 3 in the night, then that is a boundary. So you've got to draw that line and say, no, this we are not going to discuss. So, and part of the mentorship is actually helping the person to grow, because they may not know that that is inappropriate. I mean, many students start off by giving me the XAXA kind of thing. I mean, I've had students calling me, then they tell me, oh, niaje, ni so and so. Then I'm like, who is that? I'm your student. Then I tell them, okay, let's meet tomorrow at this time. And when we meet, I've got to tell them, okay, by the way, we are preparing you for the marketplace. If you go to the marketplace and you call your boss and tell them niaje, if that was an internship, you already know that you're counting your days to exit. They might even just tell you, pack your things right now and go. But when this, I mean, for them, perhaps that is normal. They don't see anything wrong with niaje. But when you now inform them that that is not right, then the next time, because like even those niaje instances, usually they will come during the first few sessions. Then you tell them, okay, by the way, never ever tell me niaje. Never ever write to me an SMS in capital. Never. They may look like they're obvious, but that is part of the journey. I remember actually my PhD supervisor, Professor Kelly Chibale, could actually close his office and take a toothbrush and show somebody how to brush their teeth. I mean, you may think that is going overboard, but he'd notice this person is not brushing their teeth well. And he took it upon himself to help this person instead of gossiping to say, hey, you guys, keep off social distance, so and so. He wanted this person to become better. So he'll actually show you how it is done. Yeah.
Very, very, very good points. Very, very good points. Dr. Gladys, is there anything like mentorship by observation? Is it possible to watch somebody's life? For example, if I'm working with the soon-to-be Dr. Carol, and in her office setup, I can just observe her life and just observe how she carries herself, how she handles crisis, how she handles situations, and even more than that, even more than just at a glance kind of mentorship. Is it possible to receive mentorship by even way of online, where I can watch speeches, videos, whether they are preachings, whether they are explanations of technology, whether it's someone who had passed on, like Steve Jobs, who invented things and is talking about how he overcame challenges, how he failed, how he was sent out of his company and then still come back. Can that still be grouped as, or can we categorize that as part of mentorship? And how best should people with such opportunities approach such scenarios or such kind of mentorship?
Oh, let me clarify. What do you mean by the second point? Like the people doing online?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So by observation, mentorship by observation, again, disclaimer is just using my example, right? And I think everyone has experienced this. And I want us, allow me to redefine the idea or the meaning of mentorship as helping, right? So I'll give you a very good example. And I think we don't talk a lot about finances and wealth creation. We are just taught in school where Soma, get A's, get a job. What do you do with your money? Do you just be paying bills and that is it? So I want to give, like, the way I personally learned, I'm still learning, right? The way I personally learned about, like, wealth creation and doing business or just managing your finances and money through a vlogger. And so they helped me, and I want to consider that mentorship. right? So if that is an example of someone helping you, I don't know them, they don't know me, but their videos were really amazing, and they were giving their own personal experiences, and they were saying, this is how much I was earning in this year, and this is what I did with my money, and now my wealth is like this, and this is what I'm continuing. And they really inspired me because I could see myself in their situation. And that's how I learned. And it changed how I was looking at investments and wealth creation, etc. And so that's just an example of a recent example where I want to say I got mentorship through someone I don't know, just a vlogger, right? So I want to say, yes, I think by observation. So watching someone or watching your siblings, like my brothers for sure, I keep saying the reason why I chose engineering was because of them. And so I watched them enjoy maths, physics, and enjoy engineering, and then subconsciously I gravitated towards engineering, and that I think that was also by observation. So I want to say yes, and I think all of us are, every day, we are mentored in that way, through observing our parents, our siblings, our neighbors, our friends, and things like that. And then you asked, how do these people then approach that mentorship?
In terms of planning, in terms of planning and programming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a mentor approaching that, so I think just knowing, I would say, because I know some people have told me they've been encouraged by my story, and I want to think I've kind of helped them or like mentored them by them observing my life. And so like I just try, so what I personally, this is my personal experience, I try to be vulnerable and say, okay, while we talk about the good things, there are also these downsides, and this is how I handle them, so that it's because assuming they are learning by observation, they've never met me, they watch my videos, and so I try to be as honest and as vulnerable as possible, so that they can see themselves in my situation, and hopefully they can learn from my story.
Yes, Carol. The same question to you, especially in reference to your environment, work environment, which is the corporate world. How is this best approached? By just observing how people, and you know, companies do this a lot, especially at the corporate level. There are many products that you can trace to Apple, or many Samsung products that you can trace to another manufacturer. So they observe this, or the cars, whether they are the cars and all that. How can this again be translated into individuals' lives, whether in the corporate also?
So I think for me, I will share some of my experiences in corporate and where I've been observing how some people are doing. So I'll talk a lot about it from a leadership perspective. So I've had some amazing bosses, and I've also had some not so amazing bosses. And from both of them, I have learned. So I remember when I started working, you know, I used to struggle to write emails. I would wonder, where do you, because always I struggle, how do you communicate effectively by writing? And I started seeing how people frame their emails. So, you know, one of the observations I made was when you put an action against an email with a question mark or with a clear ask, then you get a quick response and response, and you know, a move. So I started then changing the way I write my emails based on that. Or some bosses that, you know, you could see how they handle certain leadership situations. So just by watching how, for example, how they run a meeting, how they handle a conflict, probably you're part of the team that is involved in this, and you watch this guy, how they do it, and you're like, I like the way they do it, I'm going to do it like that. This is just by experience, and certainly there are those that you look at them and you're like, I'm never going to do that because that doesn't work. So then you learn how not to do certain things, and you learn then the best practice for others. So I always say, whatever situation you're in is always a learning process. As long as you're open to learn, whether it's great or not great, you learn how to or how not to. Yeah.
So I think there is a question from one of the students here, and they're asking a question about when somebody sends you a text message of hi and nothing else follows. Yes, who is that? Was that question?
I actually wrote it too. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
It's very common.
So it's very common. Yeah, and again, there are people who just do not respond, and especially making people understand. You know, at your level, sometimes it's so, how do I say this without sounding funny? But what I'm trying to say is that there are many people that I would even text. I have friends who are probably directors in some other companies. I will even text that person on WhatsApp. It's a person I chat with. When he needs me to respond to something, I would respond. In fact, I take it as a privilege. Yeah, I'll immediately respond, even stop my car, and then just respond to that. If it's the other way around, then it probably takes maybe some other minutes. How do you deal with such communication? Basically, you are being texted a lot, Dr. Peggy, because of your profession.
I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
When somebody sends a text, hi, I'm likely to ignore it. Because, I mean, you've got a busy schedule, so you do not know what this person, you know, if somebody asks something, then you have a response to it. But sometimes somebody says hi, and if you even respond back hi, the next question is probably, how are you doing? So you're basically leading each other to a path that goes nowhere. So I think the best thing is just avoid sending such a text, really. Because to be honest, hi, I don't respond.
So hi is not a communication.
No, it is not.
You need to understand what is communication.
Yes.
What are you communicating?
Yes.
Yeah, and again, another thing is to understand that people can be busy, people may forget, and even the basic wisdom of life, just how do I remind this person? You know, you may remind somebody in such a way, or even appreciate. There are things that I don't like at personal level, like, for example, when I've helped someone and they say thanks with some X somewhere between the lines, okay? So some of those things, they're very basic, but young people may not know, but they're called the soft skills. And so I just want you to talk to us about the soft skills of life, and especially not really to be specific to your industry, but these are soft skills in life that any person, any young person or an older person, there are people I know that you've rejected in an interview panel. They were qualified, but you just noticed that, no, I can't work with this one. This one will come and run down the company. Yes, some of those soft skills. Could you just help people understand the role they play in life?
So actually, this is quite a timely question because we are just about to hire graduate trainees in our organization. And usually for me, this is a very good experience because, you know, you see the CV of the person, and then when they present themselves in the interview, you struggle to reconcile the CV and the individual. Many people focus on building their papers, but they don't focus on building how to present themselves as an individual. So the paper that opens the door for you is not followed by a person that looks like the paper. And many people struggle especially to express themselves, to articulate who they are. So when you ask them, for example, I remember 2 years ago we were interviewing fresh graduates, and one of the questions we were asking is, tell us about yourself, or what project did you do at the university? And you know, this is someone who's just graduated, surely. You remember the project you did. Most of them were engineers. What project did you do? And some guy cannot even explain to you the project. So if you spent a whole year doing this project and you can't explain, how do you explain about, how do you express yourself as a person? So I think communication is very important. Very, very important. Not just communication, but understanding how to package yourself and really present yourself in front of a panel. Why should I hire you and not the other guy? You tell me why. You should be able to convince the panel. And I don't know where people learn these skills, but I think there's so much content, and also there's just a lot of people you can ask to help you prepare. How many people prepare when they're going for interviews? You don't prepare to say, you know, these guys will ask me about an engineering, I don't know, Schrodinger equation or whatever that I learned many years ago. Many times we don't look for that because you've done that, we see in your papers. Now we want to see you because when you come to the workplace, you're going to be working with people. And it's how you're going to relate with those people. What do you bring as an individual to the team? Are you going to be the toxic employee who is always constantly whining? Or are you going to be the source of positive energy? So those are the things that many young people need to prepare themselves. I'll tell you, when I was interviewing the first time, I was never this confident. I wasn't even so sure about, some of the ways, but clearly the people who interviewed me must have seen something. But over the years, of course, you hone these skills, you build your confidence. And I always tell people, when you're still a student, find opportunities that give you the chance to build the skills. If there's a club, be a leader. It gives you the opportunity to speak in front of people. You build your public speaking skills, and therefore when you present yourself in a panel, then you'll be able to be a better person. Or even if it is a conference, try and find an opportunity to be in a panel to discuss. It just builds little by little. And over time, you become very articulate, and when you speak, you convince. And unfortunately, the privileged, or is it fortunately or unfortunately? Unfortunately, many people who come from humble backgrounds, and especially the rural environment, miss the opportunity to be hired, especially by corporates.
True.
Not because they're not smart, but because they just can't present themselves. And they become frustrated, and they give up. But usually, if you find yourself getting invited to interviews and you're not getting selected, first thing you should check is, how am I doing from my presentation skills? How am I presenting myself and articulating, my skill sets? So those are some of the things that nobody tells you, especially if they don't select you, but it could be one of the reasons. At least that's what I see as the main reason why we don't hire people.
Very important, very, very, very important. We want to close the discussion. But before we go to the parting shots from the panel, I want to give one last chance to a few individuals to ask last questions. Then I'll just come back to them, and then we will wind up. I think we've had, this is one of the most intelligent conversations I've had in my entire life. And I'm so privileged. So do not waste this chance. You can ask your questions. Yes? I can see another hand there. So we'll start with her, and then we will proceed to him. You could come closer when she has finished. Yes.
Hello, my name is Sumaya from pharmacy from UON. So my question is, how do you deal with unhealthy or a toxic workplace, and you don't have another option to change? It's not like I've experienced this yet, but some of my friends have gone through that, are telling me how hard it is. So maybe when I experience that, not when I haven't done it, but maybe how to deal with that toxic workplace. Another question I had, so I am a very strong believer of preparing for the future. So how would you invest later in life, and how to manage your finances? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that question goes to who?
The whole panel.
Oh, the whole panel. Okay, thank you. We can pick another one from there.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Nico. And I have a question for the panelists. How do you deal with the process of transition from school to corporate, or even from corporate to furthering your studies? Because most of you, from your stories, you moved from. It might seem rosy for all of us to hear, oh, I finished in JQuad, then I moved, I went to Oxford. Yeah, there's a process of transition between that, and then sometimes the transition process can be long for others, it can be short for other people, and during that process, it can be consuming. Your thoughts can consume you. You might have a lot of ideas. Things during that process are normally not very rosy. There are many thorns during that process. So how do you deal with that process of transition?
Okay. Okay, one more.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sharon. I'm a law student. can answer. So I was wondering whether it's okay to have more than one mentor in the same field. I'm asking this because I've had a mentor before, and one of the things she told me in our preliminary meetings was that if I ever consider having a mentor in the same field, I should let her know, because along the way there could be contradiction. What she's telling me and what the other mentor is telling me is actually different. So I want to tell her and let her know how we can proceed from that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have 3 questions from 3 young people. So thank you so much. I think on the whether you need to have more than one, we will give it to Dr. Peggy. Will handle that. So take it up.
Okay, I think with mentorship, for me, I don't see anything wrong with having more than one mentor because we are very clear about the objectives. So you might find something that you'd like Gladys to mentor you on, and you might find something else that Carol can mentor you on. But it's very important that if the mentor actually specified that he or she would like to be told, then it's just in order that you inform them, because even in this mentorship, there is no one size fits all. We are human beings and everybody operates in their own style. So perhaps for that particular mentor, that is how they work, and for you to approach them to be your mentor, there must be something that you saw. So you just comply. If ever you need another mentor, inform them. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is well answered. So please take the next question from the gentleman, the guy who mentioned that he doesn't understand how there is this transition period and it takes a bit of time for others. Others are quite lucky. I don't know whether it's luck or many other factors combined. So you could answer that.
Oh, so on transition, my take on transition is the same as failure. I think as long as you are moving and you are ambitious in life, transitions are going to be a lot. So I think the first thing is acknowledging that it's okay, and you are not the only one transitioning. Everyone is transitioning. It could be career, it could be relationship, it could be anything else. But I think as long as life is moving and you are growing, transitions will happen. So I talk a lot, so there is a book I wrote, it's called The Bold Dream. And like I mentioned, as long as you're ambitious and you are having bold dreams, those for sure, those transitions and scary moments will be there. And in that book, I talk vividly and vulnerably and honestly about one night when I slept, and in the morning, I wanted to turn down the PhD offer. Because I was just like, what did I just do? JQuat BSc, and I want to do a doctorate at the University of Oxford. And I wanted to write an email. But anyway, it's a very long story, but just to acknowledge that while you are transitioning, and while you are making that step, the bigger the step, the bigger the anxiety and the fear, and that is just part of the package. And I think just acknowledging that those things will be there. So that time I was still young in transitioning, because since I went to primary school, I had never had any major transition. Just like the high school, primary to high school, which everyone does, and then high school to uni, everyone does. And I'd never had a major transition like that in 2014 and 2015. That's when that transition happened. So I like to give that as an example, because that was the first massive step in my life. I'm happy in hindsight that I did take a leap of faith and some courage and said yes to the opportunity, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that transition, that scary transition. So just to say, as long as you are making a move, the bigger the move of the transition, the fear and all anxiety will be there. And so just, and also it's a muscle, because now that was in 2015, 2014. Right now I'm also making a massive transition from my previous role to something else. I'm scared, but not as scared as when I was in 2014. Because sometimes this thing happened, like even in relationship, when my relationship ended, the character development, I was like, this is the end of the world. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And then after 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 year, you're like, why was I crying? And also, like, even in career, when I look back now, I'm like, why was I losing sleep about the offer? it wasn't too scary. Like it was scary at the time. And I think also the amygdala, the part of the brain that kind of helps us, amygdala, that helps us to remain evolutionary, right? So that you are not taking yourself to problems. So sometimes when that wire is going, hey, it's actually just normal evolutionary. It's not like it's really scary. And we think that there is fire over there, but it's just the brain kind of playing magic. So anyway, how to handle transition, just acknowledge that as long as you are moving, transitions will be there. And just learn to be okay, make peace with that anxiety and fear, and just know that it's a muscle. The more you push yourself to the edge and make those transitions, the more you become solid and learn how to navigate them.
Thank you so much. So, Ms. Carol, you'll respond to the lady and.
So you had two questions, and the first one was answered. The toxic workplace.
Yes, the toxic workplace.
Not yet. Okay.
You answered because I think.
So you had two questions on the toxic workplace and investing, right? Very interesting questions, Sumaya. And toxic workplace. Personally, I cannot thrive in a toxic environment. So there are two things I can do. I can change the environment, either by bringing whatever I have to offer to the place to make it less toxic. And if that cannot change, then I have to change myself by removing myself from that environment. And I always believe there are choices. You cannot say they don't have a choice. There are choices. Choices exist. And you make a choice to stay in a toxic environment because nobody ties you to a place. So until you have that understanding that there's power, it's the power that you give to that environment, and you also the choice you make to stay. If the environment cannot change, then you have to change yourself or remove yourself from that environment. That's what I would say. And sometimes also we like to become, we call them pity parties. We like to have victims crowded together and, talking about how bad this place is, and that is all we talk about. Guess what? It even becomes even worse because we are feeding that toxic environment by what we tell ourselves. And what we say to ourselves starts to become the truth. So that's just how the brain works. It's probably a conversation that we can continue with. It's probably a whole other 1 hour of discussion if I want to talk about. Investing is a very interesting topic. And for me, I think one of the things I have not mentioned in this panel, and I'm sure these ladies would say the same thing, is I am a lifelong learner and I read and read widely. So one of the things that probably I forgot to mention as a source of your mentorship is really from books, from what others have done before you, from the how-tos. There are many, many books. So on investing, I think for me it's really taking steps at every point in your life. So when you're starting your life, depending on what you choose to do, if you choose to go the entrepreneurial route, it is a different, monster altogether. If you choose to become a salaried person, it's a different thing. If you choose to have a side hustle with a salary, which is what most Kenyans are doing. So all those things mean that you approach finances differently, but always constantly learning, to be able to make sure that you're securing your future. At least the basics for me is usually ensuring that you have an insurance cover for your medical, making sure that you're contributing to a pension in whatever format you're in. It depends on how far you can take the insurance to have a life cover, in case you disappear and there are people depending on you, they will be able to continue living, and many other things. But always then learning to be responsible with your finances in terms of how you spend the money, how you save, where you invest, which returns, and there are many different asset classes that you can take. Someone shared with me recently, and I'll share with you, the periodic table of investing. I found it very, very fascinating. So I can share that template, and you can have a look at it. They've put together all the different types of investing, from fixed income to real estate to bonds to shares to whatever. There are many, many classes. I don't think we can finish that class today. And I wouldn't say I'm an extreme expert, but I can have a conversation on that topic because of reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we are really coming to the tail end of this discussion, and I want just to give an opportunity to my panel to give their parting shots, and especially on the areas that probably we've not covered, that you probably think it's worth mentioning, and just to give a little encouragement to your, to the young people who are watching, or to anyone else. It doesn't have to be young people, and then we will come back and say goodbye. So I'll start with Dr. Kemei.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interactive session and for the engaging questions. I think my parting shot is really, we need to kill the culture of Bora Uhai. That is about survival. You need to thrive. Let's not settle for mediocrity. Let's not settle for average. Work to be the best that you can be, not just to survive. Thrive in whatever environment that you are in. Thank you.
You so much. Thank you so much. Welcome.
That's really nice. Bora Uhai.
Is it now? It should be Uhai Bora.
Uhai Bora is good.
Yeah,
But
okay.
Bora Uhai is good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome, Doctor.
So me, I have two asks. Okay, so first of all, if you want to reach me, the best way to reach me is through my website, www.gladyschipkirui.com. So whatever, if you want to discuss mostly about scholarships, I'm going to ask scholarship links. I have 400 plus active scholarships, so I can send that gladly to you. So because mentorship, mentee relationship is give and take, and I've given you guys. So I have two asks from you. The first one is, if you like my story and you want to read more, I have two books, The Bold Dream and The PhD Journey. If you want to do masters or considering PhD, you can read more about my personal stories and tips and strategies of applying for scholarship, of thriving, or mostly abroad, because that's where I did my postgrad. And then number two, like I was telling Kipu, I'm currently going through transition. And I'm trying to wet my feet in entrepreneurship. And I'm building a startup. And the biggest question, the biggest scare at night, I'm like, am I building this thing and no customer will show up? But I'm also asking myself, is it worth not trying? But I want to try. So I'm building a startup. It's called Saidiwa Rides. So if you guys go to Saidiwa, like Usaidia, saidiwa.com, and download the app in early January, we'll be piloting SGR, from SGR to town, but it will be a taxi for, we like to call it, it's a marriage between Airbnb, for those who know, Airbnb, Uber, and Matatu. I'd really appreciate if you guys download it sometime end of December or January, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
So for me, first of all, I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I would like to say to the audience and those that are online, you know that each of us has a path. It will never be the same for all of us, but it is being intentional that you can actually reach your destination. So I think sometimes we have to drive our destinies and not wait for destiny to drive us. It's by the decisions we make today that our lives turn out tomorrow. Thank you.
Can you just appreciate I've done a wonderful show. And thank you so much even for the audience, for the Kemei's family, for Major Kemei, for Peggy, for Dr. Gladys, for Carol. Thank you so much. May God bless you abundantly. And so we come to the end of this discussion, and we welcome you to watch as many times as you can. You can download the same video, especially on YouTube where it's available. At the same time, you can also contact my members of the panel privately if so need be, and especially for the ones that have availed their contacts. I think that is quite important. At the same time, immediately after this, we will have a short photography moment with the panelists, so you can also interact with them shortly before they can leave. I didn't know that this discussion would take this long, but it was quite interesting that stopping it was was going to be criminal. Yeah, so I truly appreciate this, and especially the fact that, you know, just interacting with such brilliant people. You know, sometimes we do host discussions, and sometimes you find people really struggling even to communicate the things they have learned, they have done. But for this panel, it was quite a ride of my life. Thank you so much. This was so easy. And anytime you want to do this, let me know. I'll be here. Thank you so much. May God bless you. And my name is Mark Obar.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Hi.
So we'll take a photo.
You are a very good moderator.